1. I have a highly specific job that usually sends me to construction sites where somebody not knowing what I do would say I just watch the digger load trucks. Of course, it's more complicated than this, but it's not important for the story. My company is usually hired by the owner of the site, not the company which is actually building there. Because of this, I only have to work with the workers there, and I'm not required to do something else. So on to the story. I was sent to a construction site in the city with very few parking spaces around. Because of this, the company building there had to deal with the city to declare space along the road, usually used for parking, to a no parking zone, to be able to store some of their stuff there, and had set up signs to make this clear. It was summer at the time and pretty hot. The operator of the digger and I were the only people on the site through lunchtime, when some lady shouted to me to come to the entrance of the construction site. I had set myself up in pretty much the only piece of shadow on the whole site, and really wasn't in the mood to leave that spot. So I shouted back to her to tell me what she wants. Turns out she had parked in the no parking zone, and hadn't noticed that the workers had set up a movable fence to surround that zone to be able to store their tools there without it getting stolen right away. So her car, a Porsche, was almost boxed in, as 2/3 of her car were in the no parking zone. She is still shouting at me, so after seeing what's going on, I get interested and move on. I get to her, covered in dust, taking my time moving up to her. She was in her 40s, maybe, and wore high heels and a nice dress, typical businesswoman. The whole time she was shouting to me to speed up and move faster. She's in a hurry. So finally I'm in front of her.
Finally, that took you ages. Now move the damn fence so I can pull out of there. Why would you even box me in?
I turn around slowly and look at her. It would have been easy for me, or even for her, to move the fence and let her out, but she wasn't very nice, and I wasn't obliged to help her. Sorry, won't do that.
What? Why would you say that? Let me out.
And she used some not nice words. I don't work here. I said that, standing in front of her, covered in dust, wearing my high-visibility vest and my hard hat. Left her speechless for a moment. Then all hell broke loose. I was lying. She would get me fired. She would call the police because this was theft. She knew the mayor, and all kinds of other things. I just stood there pretty amused on the inside, just like the operator in his digger who was laughing so loud I could almost hear him over her screaming. While it was amusing to see her go off at this point, I was a bit pissed too, because I only could imagine how this entitled brat would speak to the people she actually had power over. While she was in her tirade, 2 policemen turned the corner. She must have noticed the grin on my face because she abruptly turned around and saw the 2 approaching her car.
Finally, someone who can help me. Tell this,
another not so nice word, colorful language,
to move the fence so I can pull out.
The 2 policemen looked at her, and then at her car, finally at me. One of them walked to the vehicle, and then the other approached me.
What's going on here?
She ordered me to let her pull out of the no parking zone, and I don't work for this company. I pointed to the big signs where the well-known building company advertised itself and to my name tag. I wear one in my high-visibility vest, with my company's name on. The policeman understood very fast. This no parking zone is very common in the city. He walked over to his colleague, who was the target of the woman now, and said a few words to him. He pulled out a small book and began writing a ticket. Only then it dawned on the lady that she was in trouble. She still kept shouting that she did nothing wrong because she was boxed in and wouldn't be in the no parking zone if only I let her pull away.
He doesn't work here, and you're in a no parking zone. Here's your ticket.
He handed her her ticket and moved the fence to let her pull out. She was standing there a few seconds with the ticket in her hands, speechless. Then she got in her car, giving me the stink eye, and went off. I tipped my hard hat when the 2 policemen continued their walk and went back to tell the operator of the digger what happened. Had a good laugh after all. 2. A little bit of backstory to understand this a little better. In Estonia, there are usually a lot of Russians going around, especially in summer. Many often learn Estonian because, well, they're living in a foreign country. It's the normal thing to do. Then there are just people that choose not to learn it despite living here because Estonia used to be occupied by Russians. So some believe that we should learn their language despite them literally living in a foreign country. Which is quite an absurd expectation in my opinion. In summer, My friend had a part-time job at the beach as carousel, bounce house, trampoline ticket salesman, and having to help kids on the carousels. You get it, it's something a teen can handle. They didn't have any uniforms and usually would just sit in the shade near the actual employee chair and table until someone asked to buy a ticket, usually wearing summer clothes and a fanny pack for money. Sometimes I and some others would hang out at her workplace since it was allowed and we were teens, so we were bored and had nowhere to be at. Basically, my friend was packing as they were closing up in the tent nearby, and I just happened to sit near the employee chair to make sure her backpack wasn't stolen. That's when it happened. The Russian lady in her 40s with blue eyeshadow on her eyes and leopard print leggings way too small for her stomach, squishing her waist and creating more rolls than there were, dragging her blonde kid by the waist and pushing her 1 or 2-year-old in a stroller, waltzing towards me. I was absolutely terrified she was going to make me babysit her kids while she was going to jump on the trampoline or something. But I realized quickly that she would have destroyed the trampoline, so I had no idea why she was coming towards me. Then it hit me. Oh no. She thinks I work here. The lady stated something in Russian and threw €2 on the nearby table, tapping her foot. I was sitting there absolutely confused, trying to mimic something as I couldn't remember my Russian from 6th grade, sitting on the bench next to the worker's chair. Then I realized how to end this madness. I was going to say the only thing I can say in Russian, which basically translates to I don't understand Russian. Granted, I've been taught Russian from 6th grade, so I more or less can understand words and simple phrases and sentences, and can guess the meaning easily. I just can't speak it. She replied with something along the lines of, "How can you say that without knowing Russian? You're lying." She went on a huge rant of what I'm guessing, judging by how many times she said words like, "School teach Estonia rude to Russians." How Estonians are rude to Russians and should learn Russian instead of being dickheads and speaking their own language in their own country. She was yelling her guts out until I understood a complete sentence. "I want to speak to the manager, you'll be fired." Only in Russian. Then I remembered how to say I don't work here. But her kid cut me off with his crying, and her other kid kept demanding the bounce house. Then she was trying to comfort her kid and got quiet. This bitch ruined my day, so instead of telling her that I don't work here during the quiet time, I waited for her kid to calm down. I promised myself I wouldn't be such a pushover and stood up, being taller than her by surprise, I was 15 and 5'9", and said in the loudest voice possible exactly after her kid had calmed down, "I don't work," in Russian. I know how hard taking care of a kid can be, so I purposefully yelled so she'd have to console her kid again. I felt like a douche, but I was tired of being a pushover. Kid started bawling. Her other kid tried running towards the bounce house and tried to make his mom take him there. She got so angry that she was actually red, screaming something, and literally dropped her baby into the sand, mentioning manager and that I should just do my job and not fool around just because they're Russian. Multiple times. I was scared she was going to kick my ass from the rage. I may be a bit of a dick, but I felt bad for the baby and rushed past her and picked it up, which infuriated her more, then put it in the stroller. No one should have a mom like that, I thought. Eventually, my friend's boss, who can't speak Russian, asked what was going on. I said that this lady thinks I work here. The lady started throwing a literal tantrum and crying about something. She was speaking fast and in Russian, trying so hard to be dramatic that this kid escaped into the bounce house, which I wasn't even going to try and stop because, again, I don't work there. He then told her simply in Russian, "She doesn't work here and we're closing up anyway, also get your kid off there." The lady gets this look on her face that she's going to sue me and no one listens to her. But she leaves with a few Russian curse words and calling her bratty seeming kid over, who has been interrupting this entire time by demanding to go to the bounce house and yelling for the mom. I was almost crying. I thanked the man, friend's boss. Then he said, "Oh, I don't work here either. I was just bored and watched the show from the bench near the swings. You should probably learn Russian. She said some pretty nasty things about Estonians." Then proceeded to translate for me what she thought she was saying to the manager. Apparently she said I threw her precious baby into the sand, denied them service because of where they're from, and that she's a single mom and they should give my paycheck to her. How I mocked her and how Estonians should all speak Russian. I thanked him again. and he left to get some ice cream. Then my friend finally came back and we started rolling up the carpets and deflating the bounce house, etc. After she was off duty, I couldn't wait to tell her the story, but she was busy telling me some of her issues, so it wasn't the right time. I thought I'd tell her some other day, and it's been half a year to this day. Nobody knows, so I'm happy to share it. 3. For a little background, I would explain that I suffer from a rare disease. I am literally 1 in a million, and I visit the hospital a lot, not the emergency room, but the outpatient wing. For the past 2 years, I had follow-up visits and other appointments, like MRI, X-rays, blood testing, almost every 2 weeks. It can sound weird, but rare diseases never come alone, and mine loves company. What I mean is that I have a lot of secondary conditions or comorbidities, caused by having a rare disease, and every one of these conditions are treated by a different specialist. Hence the many visits I had in the past 2 years. Now it's almost settled down since my internist is doing one of the follow-ups. About myself, I will say that I am of African descent, although my mom is the whitest of white women in the world, so I am what some people call white passing, although I've been mistaken for other ethnicities a lot like Arabic, Roma, or Maghrebi. Also, I always wear black or really dark colors, and my head is shaved because of one of the comorbidities. I also have PTSD because of being treated like a liar, a drug seeker, or mentally ill for years. About the hospital, well, it's a mess. It was built like a very luxurious hotel, and out of the blue, they turned it into a public hospital, which means a lot of renovations that turned it into a maze. The staff got lost, even though it has been open for several years now. And now to the I don't work here lady story. A week ago, I was at the hospital looking for the internist's office. It was my first time seeing this particular doctor, so I arrived with plenty of time. My former internist has a very busy schedule, and she asked if I wanted to change specialists, so I went along with it. One may think that if those 2 specialists have the same speciality, their offices would be next to each other, right? Wrong. This mess of a hospital is arranged by departments. My former specialist is from the Systemic Autoimmune Diseases Department, and the new one is from the Rare Diseases Department, though their offices are in different floors. I was as lost as Santa on Easter. I was looking around trying to find the place when a wild Karen appeared. I have nystagmus, which means I can't focus on moving objects, and I see them as a blurring. All of a sudden I see this fluorescent blob coming from my right side as a nightmare in neon.
What do you think you're doing?
This ball of pink yells at me. Excuse me? I was very confused.
What do you think you are doing?
Yells Neon Karen. There were so many thoughts running through my mind. Who is this lady? Why is she yelling at me? But most importantly, I was trying very hard to control myself since doctor's appointments trigger my PTSD, especially when I see a new doctor. PTSD can make me react in 2 opposite manners. I have a panic attack, or I am the most passive-aggressive bitch you ever come across. I think you've mistaken me for someone else, I said politely.
I know you very good, answered Neon Karen. I seen you here a gazillion times.
And what do you want? Maybe it sounded rude, but I was trying really hard not to panic.
What do I want? Why is my poor little baby waiting for the doc to see him when we have been here for ages?
The little baby is a teenager with a full-grown beard. I don't know, why should I care? Confusion took my anxiety away.
Why?
The screech was so loud that I saw people in the waiting room covering their ears.
It's your job to tell the doctors we are here.
No, it's not, She interrupted me to make clear she was better than me.
These filthy immigrants come to our country and steal our jobs, claim our benefits, and don't even bother to learn the language.
I was baffled and pissed. The passive-aggressive bitch was starting to show up. First of all, we are speaking the same language. Second, I am a citizen. I was born in this country. And third, and most important, I am a patient.
No, you're not. I've seen you here a lot of times.
People waiting for their appointments were starting to pay attention to us. I must point out, the waiting rooms at this hospital are not proper rooms, but the corridors in front of doctors' offices, so there I was, in the middle of a corridor, having this ridiculous argument with Neon Karen. Oh, since you've seen me here many times, I must work here. An impeccable argument. This sarcasm entered Neon Karen's head from one ear, passed undisturbed through her brain, and left from the other ear. Have you seen me in uniform? She hesitated for a while, but then started lying.
Of course, you wear one of those blue scrubs.
Really, blue scrubs? Only emergency room staff wear them. What is my position in this hospital?
You're one of those nurses at the front desk.
The people at the front desk aren't nurses. They're administrative clerks. And don't wear scrubs, but short lab coats.
See, you know the uniform. You work here.
Anybody with a brain can differentiate nurses from administrative clerks. That is probably why you cannot tell them apart.
What do you mean?
I burst into laughter. And I wasn't the only one. I'm sure people in the waiting room were genuinely laughing. Mine was more like a nervous laughter, trying to calm down, and don't let Neon Karen get on my nerves. Ma'am, I don't work here. And even if I worked here, I would never help you.
You're lying, and I'm gonna complain, and you're gonna get fired.
Her face was as pink as the tracksuit she was wearing. A tracksuit I'm sure has never seen a gym or any kind of exercise in its long, long life. Good luck trying to fire someone who does not work here. At this point, everybody in the corridor is laughing loudly.
Why is everybody laughing? Stop laughing!
Her face was brighter than the tracksuit. Even her son was laughing. He tried to placate her, since the voice on the speakers was compelling the people in the waiting room to be quiet. He even apologized to me. I'm sorry, my mom gets very upset when I visit the doctor, he said. By the way, I asked him, which department is it? Dermatological and venereal diseases? As I said before, lost as Santa on Easter. I was about to thank him when Neon Karen interrupted me again.
Why are you asking? You should know.
For the last time, I don't work here. I started to walk away, trying to focus on looking for the rare diseases department, or at least a real staff member that could help me. I was fuming, but trying to stay calm since abrupt changes in my blood pressure can be dangerous. All of a sudden, I see a black object coming from my back and crashing into the floor in front of me. It was a mobile phone.
How dare you turn your back on me?
There is only one thing that can make me switch from passive-aggressive to full-on aggressive, and that is physical violence. Listen here, you effing bitch! If you try to hit me again, I would beat you to a pulp. I don't work here, I never did. But even if I did, you are not entitled to treat anyone like crap. Who do you think you are? You're nothing but a piece of trash that thinks everybody owes you something. When in reality, you're the one that should be grateful for not having been beaten. I was feeling my heart beating in my head. I started feeling dizzy. My vision was blurring and I could barely hear anything. I don't remember much from this point on because I fainted. It is called a syncopal episode. When I recovered consciousness, security was there. Also, a couple of nurses were taking care of me and trying to put me on a stretcher. I was already wearing a cervical collar and a sphygmomanometer on my arm. Neon Karen was fake crying and complaining about me. I didn't hear what she said, but I heard another patient telling security she was lying. I know, answered one of the security guys. That's why we're here. We saw everything through the cameras. Neon Karen was stubbornly sticking to her lies and started mumbling something along the lines of,
"She was rude to me."
And then she started using some slurs.
"She should get fired."
Then one of the nurses, who I know from previous visits, says, "She does not work at this hospital." Neon Karen, being the empty-spaced head she's known to be, asked,
"If she doesn't work here, why have I seen her every time I came here?"
"Because she is a patient and hospitals are full of them," answered the nurse.
"Well then, you shouldn't let people like her wander around the hospital. What if we caught whatever she has?" "I don't want to be a bald bitch."
"You already have an empty head. If you shaved your head like I did, your outside would match your insides." I could not shut my mouth. It was too easy. She was about to reply when one of the security guys interrupted her to inform her that she was being arrested. Instead of being a rational human being, Neon Karen started yelling that she was being assaulted by security. It took 2 security guys to get her cuffed. When police arrived, I was on a stretcher with a cervical collar, and yet she was claiming to be the victim. I was sent to the ER, so I didn't know what happened until much later. The story went as follows. Police retrieved all security footage, and since the incident happened in a public place, she was immediately charged with aggravated disruption of public order and aggravated assault. Picking a fight in a hospital and assaulting a disabled person are aggravating circumstances in my country. I didn't have to press charges, but I will be called to court as a victim. But that is not the funny part of the story. When I was in the ER, the nurse I know came to visit and told me the whole thing. In every hospital in the region, we are talking about 50 hospitals, there is a machine at the entrance of every outpatient area. Where you leave the elevator or staircase, there's a really big sign on its screen that reads, "Before you enter the waiting room, please let us know you are here." When you get closer to it, you can see a smaller sign that reads, "Please enter your health service card in the slot," and an arrow pointing to the slot. After the machine reads your card, it tells you which office is your doctor's, and your name appears on a monitor above the doctor's office. Basically, this machine is like a clock-in system. And guess what? Neon Karen never put the card in the slot. What the nurse heard from her poor son is that they arrived late to the appointment, and the mother assumed the kid's name would already be on the list. Apparently, she did it on purpose. Neon Karen thought that the names show on the list at the time of the appointment, not at the very moment the card is put in the slot. Her son told her that she was wrong, and other people in the waiting room told her so, when she started complaining that her kid's name was not on the list. I asked for the kid. He looked like a nice person despite being raised by Neon Karen. The nurse told me he was still a minor despite the beard, and they called his dad. His parents were divorced and Neon Karen had custody. His dad came to take care of him. Apparently his many visits to the hospital were because he had a venereal disease but did not want to tell his mother. But since he is a minor, she was present at every doctor's appointment. So he did not tell the doctors about his problems down there. In the end, a doctor figured out what was happening, and he was sent to a venereal specialist. At the end, I did miss my appointment, but I was rescheduled for next week. I hope this time I do not find another Neon Karen. 4. I was at a Sam's Club out of town, so I was staying at a hotel on the company dime. I also found out I'm working alone. I usually work with my dad. First night went normal. Cut to before I go in the second night, I get a call. My dad informed me the jack leaked fluid through the store, and we were lucky it came up. I was warned if it leaked, park the jack out back of the hotel and call him. The leaking fluid was hydraulic fluid, this is important. I go in and see it leak. I park it, clean the mess up, and go back to the hotel, letting my dad know this is Monday night. I'm told the rental company will be called, and repeat above next night. This continues till Friday, right when it's no longer leaking, so I get to work. Oh, the mistake I made out of ignorance. The jack had terrible stutters moving, raising, and lowering. My dad shows up to check the progress and help me, because of 3 missed nights of work, to realize the danger I put myself in, and we stopped working shortly after. The rental company never fixed anything. The hydraulic fluid leaked so low it didn't have anything left to leak. Thankfully no one was hurt, or ran over because of the jerking around. 5. So let's start from the top. I was at a gas station helping a friend of mine bring in supplies from the truck. He worked for Coca-Cola at the time, and was in full uniform. I was in a blue polo and jeans, and I, knowing he had a back problem, decided to give him a hand, since I just so happened to be there. Now for the story. EB is entitled Broad, I am me, F is my friend, and AW is awesome worker. So like I said, I was helping F move some stuff from the truck into the store, and along comes EB. EB pulls up in her 2018 Mercedes-Benz, and has that daddy's little girl expression all over her face and the typical office Karen hairdo, and demands that I pump her gas for her because she is a paying customer. I politely say I don't work here, ma'am, and proceed to carry the soda into the store. Note that the dolly was broken. So 2 minutes later, after talking with F and AW, I go back outside to bring more stuff in, and she's there with the ramp up, and the door closed, blocking me from getting the soda out. So I ask her what the hell she's doing and why she closed the truck. She called me a lazy asshole, and I tell her even if I did work here, It wouldn't be my job to pump gas for her, it's her responsibility. Then I asked her to move so I can continue to do what I was doing before. She refused. So me, noticing that my buddy and AW were still talking inside, and being that I've seen many stories and watched countless videos about entitled people and I don't work here lady stories, I decided to have some fun. So after a couple minutes of arguing, I said in the best Scottish accent impersonation I could,
"Listen here, you little cunt."
Then in my normal voice I say I don't work here lady. I'm not really Scottish, just able to do good voice impressions. By now I thought she would have took the hint and went off to bother someone else or pump her own gas. I was dead wrong. She walks up to the front door while I continue to unload the truck. Of course, after reopening it, she then screeches at the AW how I should be fired and demands that he pumps her gas for her, and that people who make less than her shouldn't question what she says. I then jump in and tell her to leave until she decides to take a swing at me and tell me to shut up. Of course I dodged it, which annoyed her even more, but by now AW had her in a headlock, while me and F pinned her legs and arms down and brought her to the ground. She then has the nerve to start screaming rape at the top of her lungs, but no one else was there at the time. I then tell AW to call the police and tell them about the crazy woman, and they surprisingly ended up showing up only 10 minutes later. When the police arrived, the woman made the accusation again, in broad daylight right in front of the door of the gas station with a clear view of anyone to see. He already knew she was lying, but checked the tapes for the evidence and asked me if I wanted to press charges. I said yes, and gave the EB the biggest smile I could muster as she panicked. After the officer put her in the back of the car, I told him I wasn't really going to press charges and that I just wanted to give her a little scare. He laughed and asked me if I was sure, and I said no, I'm not really sure, but I'll still not press charges. And that was the end of that. Looking back on this, I laugh, and every time I visit the gas station, AW says, "Hey, remember the time that crazy woman attacked you?" We both have a good laugh. My friend quit working for Coca-Cola for reasons unrelated to that, and I'm not currently sure where he works now as we've lost touch. And also not sure what happened to the EB, probably was let go later that day since I did not press charges. Thanks for listening. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Idiots in the Wild number 15. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use and sent in stories for use in this video. If you have a story yourself you'd like to send in, please do send it along to kingofthecities@gmail.com. The email is in the description, and it should also be on screen at this moment. Okay, this goes up on Thursday. I get a little muddled with my recording day sometimes. I just want to take a moment to thank you all for the very kind messages of condolence you left on Sunday's video. I know the Lawless family will appreciate it very much. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.